If you ever wonder what a TransAm car is, it's not a Pontiac. It's a race series, and this is Pancho Weaver. He's going to tell us all about it.
Hey, how you doing? We build TransAm cars and have built them since '84. Most race classes are cookie cutter and they're spec type chassis. But TransAm's not like that. You can think of what you think is the best product and the design and how it goes. As long as you meet the requirements of the class, wheelbase to cubic inch, single shock per wheel, a lot of safety things. The overall design is whatever you can come up with and whatever you can think of. And that's kind of what led me to this new design back here, which is on the far plate in the back here.
So the main class of TransAm is kind of like the final frontier of the Wild West, where you can still
It really is.
do that.
I mean, it's. Here we're in a shop at the house on the lake in a basement, and you can. We've built these cars here for the last 11 years, and we show up and with a very modest racing program. We can compete at the top level and wax these guys pretty regularly. Every now and then, they get in there. Paul Menard's done a great job, and another team this last year won the championship. We've been underfunded, so that kind of, takes a little bit of traction out of where we need to be. TransAm started in 1966, and it's where Penske started his racing career with the Camaros. Mark Donohue, Parnelli was in the Fords. Dan Gurney was in the Barracudas, Swede Savage. You had all the cool race car drivers and famous guys and our legends, right? Started in TransAm, and they've worked their way through all these years. So 66, it started in Sebring. The year for us starts in Sebring as well still. So they've continued with the nostalgia of the class. And they are purpose-built race cars. I mean, there's no traction control. There's no ABS. You have to physically drive this car. Our particular cars are NASCAR 4-speeds with a gated 4-speed transmission. A lot of the guys run the sequential 5-speeds. We get a little bit of a weight break, and we do play the weight game. And this particular car is completely different in its main construction, where the earlier cars, for about the last 30 years, have been square tube construction, kind of like this old 1986 TransAm championship winning car. This is with the Wally Dallenbach drove it to the series championship win in 1986. It was sponsored by Chevrolet. It was built by Protofab as a Bob Riley design, and Gary Pratt was the fabricator, and Charlie Seelix ran the team. So the three of those guys formed a new team. They were all working at Roush in 85, and in 86 they all went on their own journey with Chevrolet, and Chevrolet wanted these cars built to run the series and to win the series, the championship. And there's pretty much an open checkbook, and they actually achieved it. And this car was the V6, actually. I'm getting a little bit back and forth with different things, but the V6, you could run a V6, and you could run about 200 and some pounds lighter vehicle. Because it's weight to cubic inch, right? Rule. So the other Protofab Camaros, which they had 3 total, the first 2 were 310 V8s, Chevrolet V8s. And this car was late getting to the series that year. There's just too much work to do. So Chevrolet was pretty excited about that because they were going to come out with the V6 in their passenger Camaros.
Oh, yeah.
And so it kind of was another. And then when it won the series, it not only was it Chevrolet, but the V6 that was just made them over the top. They were just so excited about that. So this car's been through a few different hands over the years, and it found me about 5 years ago out of Alabama. A guy had it down there for many years, and the car is honestly a real Protofab. It's chassis number 3. The Rileys here in town have chassis number 1. So we're kind of building them together at about the same time, and they'll probably run later in 25 in California at the Rolex is what we're trying to shoot for. But to bring the story back, and to tell what TransAm is and how it all took place from yesterday and then into today, So again, we had the square tube construction, which People have been doing, they're still doing it. The brand new Rileys today are square tube construction. Of course, they've got a round roll cage. And I was the same monkey following the rest of the group, building square tube chassis for, long time. I came up with this round tube construction, and boy, it just surpassed everything we've ever done in the past. It's torsionally about twice as stiff as this car, over twice as stiff. This took 16,000 pounds to twist it 1 degree through the shock towers. This took 36,000 pounds to twist it 1 degree. So if you got 16,000 pounds versus 36,000 pounds, and all you did was select round tubing. It's not even chromoly. It could be even stiffer with chromoly or some of the European materials. It's basically stock car round ground roll cage type tubing. It's a DOM product. We get it from Stock Car Steel with Greg Fernelli. Does a wonderful job providing what we need. And SRI, of course, with all the product that they have for secondhand and new parts. But all round tube construction. So the other thing that's really cool about this is the square has the 4 corners on it. The round doesn't. So you take the square material times every inch times every foot. This chassis was 100 pounds lighter for no other reason that we just selected round instead of square. So it was like a no-brainer. It's a bunch stiffer and it's a bunch lighter. Oh, why not use it?
Did people think you were weird the first time you showed up with one of those?
They saw it and they go, well, I don't know, whatever, okay. But they didn't understand, It's just pretty basic common sense, and you don't have to be a Elon Musk rocket scientist to figure this out. It's pretty straightforward. But and the cars look cool too. They're simple. They're all TIG welded. This car's just now finishing up. We're going to deliver this car to Washington State to this gentleman, Jason. He owns Pacific Raceway up in Kent, Washington. And he's quite a character, so he can't wait. He's getting really excited about his new toy. Kenny's Components does all my carbon work. We made all the molds, and then he does a beautiful job. The dash isn't here right now, but the bay bar is what ties all this together. Of course, this is a jig for the engine plate, but the bay bar comes up, I don't have it off right now, but it's on conical receivers. And so it easily repeats the geometry. Even if it moves around a little bit, as you tighten it up, it centers itself with conicals. It's worked out really well. Just little simple things like that we've learned. That actually came from the off-road days. We did a lot of Baja off-road, the Baja 1000 and the Mint 400 and the Parker 400. And I ran with Parnelli Jones and Walker Evans, worked for that company for a few years in high school, and that was a lot of fun.
So is this going to be set up for R6 Dodge like the other one?
This is going to be R5 Dodge.
Oh.
Yeah, this is going to be the R5. Just because he had them, and they're relatively inexpensive comparatively. If there's anything in racing that's inexpensive, but we've got a little bit different a steering system in this car. We've got the rack and pinion, and I told my engineers when we designed this car that I wanted more mechanical grip, and I wanted a stiffer chassis, and I wanted a few of these criterias that I wanted. It was trying to make a better piece, and show up with TransAm. And that's what we did. We did this car in CAD. It's the first car that we've done in CAD. So we could check clearances, and we could check, how things are moving and geometry and these kind of things. One of them is the mechanical grip increase was very hard to do. And the engineer says, look, it's not going to happen. I said, why? He says, well, the engine crank is in the way of the steering. And if you get more mechanical grip, you're going to have to raise that steering rack, and it's going to be in the way. It's going to be right in the middle of the crank. So I said, well, you work on the mechanical grip, I'll work on the steering. So I came up with this steering rocker, and we have our rack and pinion that hooks here and here and moves these rockers back and forth. But yet up here is where we go to the upright, and that's the actual tie rod. So all we're doing was just faking out what the rack seems to be in the car, but it's really not. It's down underneath the engine drive, which clears that. But yet we got the mechanical grip through geometry, and we also got zero bump steer.
So how does raising the rack give you more mechanical grip? Like, what does the function of that do?
When we got the mechanical grip, the rack had to be higher.
Why?
To achieve that mechanical grip through geometry, through where the points are.
Is that classified information as to
It
why
kinda
that works
is,
the way
yeah.
it
The little,
does?
hey, you're pushing up. You're pushing
I'll
up
go
the
for the
window here.
nitty gritty, and you just if you don't, I won't ask about it if you don't want me to. But
Well, and actually, I didn't really want to release a lot of the information we are now, but I'm at the end of my program. I'm checking out. This car here is possibly my last Trans Am car I'll build. So I have a signature series thing going on that will dedicate to that build and to these later cars. Which probably won't do anything for future sales or future worth of the vehicle, but it might, and I've been doing this for a long time, so I figured, why not just try to pass this on a little bit to the others. And some of the things that I've learned throughout my career and the kind of product that we build, I'm sure there'll be some interested viewers out there that might want to go down that path, and it's been an exciting ride. I mean, we've done all kinds of silly things, from stock cars, worked with Earnhardt's, from mid 2000 to 2008, started a chassis shop that they didn't have. We employed, I think, 12 guys in our chassis program. I led the program for about 4 years, from the COT days until when the company kind of imploded in 2008 in November.
so when you build a car in CAD, do you have do you kind of start at the finish line and let it work backwards from there? Like, I want the tires to do this under this condition, and then it'll help you figure out where your pivot points need to be to achieve that finished thing.
And the engineer, my engineer of choice is Chris Willis Engineering out in Encinitas, California. And he's helped me with the last, what we call this, the Generation 3 Weaver. And he helped me with the Generation 2 Weaver, which was a square tube constructed vehicle. But his talent and his background, he was involved with the Nissan GTP with the Brabhams back in the day. Oh my gosh, it's all so much engineering goes into it, and the I've kind of lost my track here.
So is this the same chassis as what that one is?
Yes, this is exactly the same car.
Can we show that one, or is that secret?
Sure. No, you can show it.
Yeah, I'd like to see how some of these components work and why you do things the way you do them. And you ever take time to dig in and think about what's actually going on inside your head? If that's something that's hard for you to do, it could really help to talk to somebody about it, with whatever those things are, whether that's work, life, relationships, especially relationships and dealing with people. Relationships aren't easy, and you're definitely not alone. So stop asking your tough questions into the endless void, or just keeping them bottled up at all. My sponsor BetterHelp will connect you with a therapist to help you find answers to some of these tough questions, or even just things that you don't want to talk to other people about. Instead of being stuck in an endless loop of questioning yourself, you can talk through relationship concerns with somebody who's trained to help you find real answers. Fill out a questionnaire and you'll match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. You can easily switch therapists at any time at no extra cost if it's just not the right fit. It's really important that you have the right type of dialogue and connection with that person to really help you get somewhere. They make sure their therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Going to therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. So there are many kinds of relationships that can be improved by therapy, not just romantic ones. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/Stapleton and get 10% off your first month therapy. What I thought the first time we came over here and looked at this car is the way this is built kind of reminds me more of a pro mod drag car than a stock car.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're quite a bit more intense than a stock car, and they're quite a bit more expensive as well. This particular car is, a finished car is close to $400,000. That's a lot of money for, a street car, if you want to call it a street car.
Yeah.
But it's got so much grip. We run 14 inches of rear rubber, 13 inches of front rubber. We run about 2.5 inches off the ground. We've got a big wing that goes on the back that's not on the car right now, so it's got lots of aero. We're bringing the aero in from the front, and we have this big shelf right here that really supplies an awful lot of downforce. And then the radiator comes in, the top the top inch goes to the air cleaner. And then the lower goes to a laid over radiator. I don't know if you can see here. And then as it goes through the radiator, you can see it kind of laying down there a bit.
Yeah.
There's a big carbon fiber funnel that comes up and matches the hood, lets the air come out the hood, and then, down the road and attaches to the one that kind of bends over the. It's actually increased our entry and corner speed so much this last year that it's threw the gearing off a little bit.
Wow.
So we're back into the, readjusting the gearing in the car, just because we're carrying so much speed coming out of the corner now and more speed going down the straightaway. This kind of helps the drivers get in and out. We have this little linkage right here that kind of allows you to get in and out. They call it the fat man door, but
So is there a weight minimum or anything for this?
Yes, there's a weight minimum. So I think it's 27. Nathan, what's the weight minimum now? 27? 2730? 2730.
Do you use lead in anything?
We do, yeah. This car has a little bit in it because it's so much lighter than the rest of the cars, but it's the other cars, they found that it's just pretty much, they get heavy quickly, with all the systems that go on and a lot more sensors, and it's just really kind of this is a simplified, attempt to be competitive, right? And the expense. We're about $100,000 cheaper for a complete vehicle than our competitors. $100,000 is a lot of money. You can go a ways with an extra $100,000, but we found that we can do it quickly, repeatable. These chassis are also like the chassis back there on the plate. All the tubing is bent on a CNC bender because we have a CAD file, and all the joints are laser coped with laser machines, with robotic laser machines. They cut it. They rotate it, they cut the other one, they put it down, they grab another one, bring it up. It's such a dance with equipment. It's amazing. But the end product is repeatability and simplicity of construction. And so that's made a big, big difference. It is a bit more pricey, but you're not paying as much labor to hand fit all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of crosses over. It's a great, Techniques is the company that's behind me on that, and that's the same company that builds the NASCAR chassis for all the Cup cars.
Yeah, I was wondering how you did that, because any chassis shop I've been into, the walls are not this clean. They're always gray from the abrasive cutting discs and grinding and all that. Yeah. But all those tubes, they just come to you
all
kind
pre-cut
of in pieces, and you just
we fit them with a barrel sander. We just kind of tune it a little bit, clip it in our jig, and tack weld it. We tack weld the entire chassis, and then it goes through a welding sequence as it's all tacked together. The rest of the tubes are kind of holding each other, and everything's in a tighter structure. And we use at least 3, if not 4 tacks per joint. And then we go through a welding sequence, and we found by doing this, we can keep our repeatability right at top, right at the very top.
So what is the story with this car?
This car is a DEI, all DEI product, transmission, rear end, engine. It's a 2000 model, and it's just about ready to go to paint, wiring, paint, and plumbing. And trying to restore this thing. It was a Steve Park Pennzoil #1 DEI car. We're getting ready to get it back on the racetrack. They've got a pretty good vintage group with these cars now, and some of the vintage drivers, the older retired drivers are coming out, and they run strong. I mean, these guys run just as strong as they used to in the old days. But this is be a kind of a neat project to get done and get it back on the highway or back on the racetrack. And what happened to that car? What happened to those guys? What happened to Steve Park? So a lot of the guys that I know are here in town still that worked on this car. So we're planning on in the future to do a segment maybe with you to kind of introduce this car back to the public and what happened to it and where it's gone and what's going on with it now.
Yeah, I've wanted to do video with Steve for a long time, but usually we go into old shops and stuff, and obviously we can't get into DEI. So I'm like, well, what kind of video would we do with Steve? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well,
This would be a
this would be
perfect
perfect.
video
Yeah,
for him,
I'd love to see Steve back in the
we
car.
can get him. We can get him. I had him in the car about 3 months ago, I think it was, and he came down and sat in his original seat, and felt the steering and the pedals and the whatnot. And he says, "Man, that's it." We changed a few little things for him, and he said, "Okay, let's go with that." So we're gonna put it right back where it's comfortable for him. We've got a cowl to build for it, and an air cleaner induction system, and then finalize this dash. And then we're ready to go to paint, Bondo and paint and wiring.
It's pretty much there.
Yeah.
Just paint. If it was painted, it would look like it could be ready tomorrow.
Right. Well, and the guys that worked on this stuff, I mean, it was amazing how quick they could turn cars around.
One thing I did notice about those is that you're using a solid rear end. I think a lot of people would say you could do. Is that one of the requirements that you have to have? It has to be a solid axle.
It is a requirement. It's independent rear suspension is not legal in the class of Trans Am. There's a rear end over here we're building back in the fab shop for this new car. And we're just finishing up the welding on the bird cages now. What we call them bird cages. This is upside down. This would be at the bottom. This is a Watts link, which takes your lateral load in the vehicle, and it doesn't as it cycles, this moves in it, moves on a pivot, so the rear end stays exactly center in the chassis. It doesn't wander to one side or the other like a panhard bar. It's got a rod and a point, and a rod and a point, so it just floats on heims, and this will rotate slightly as it goes up and down in travel, but it stays exactly centered, which is kind of a really neat design. And this is actually the roll center of the rear end. So we've been playing with lowering this more. It likes it for some reason, lower, and we continue to go lower with it. But Buzzy Racing makes these center sections. I order them up with just the tube and the snouts, and then we build our own boxes and hardware and get it all welded up. And
Do you have camber and toe in the rear end?
we do. We can use up to a degree of camber. You could make them with more camber, but it is harder on the axles for sure. We use a balled end axle, so it has a little bit of conical shape to it, and it floats in there, and it works really well. We get good life out of the. We're close to 900 horsepower now, so we're and with 14 inches of rubber. I mean. And you got grip up the butt, so it's just
That's pretty brutal.
it's brutal on everything. So
Do those 4-speeds have to be beefed up from their NASCAR configuration to handle that extra load?
nope, actually we don't beef them up, but I do take my gearbox and I rotate it 90 degrees and I lower it in the car. I've taken the gear pack that's standing on top of each other, and you've laid the gear packs on their sides, so we've lowered the center of gravity a bit. We work hard to lower our center of gravity and the overall weight of the car. It's just those little things. You do 10, 15, 20 little things, and then it accumulates to a bigger thing, Cars are getting faster and getting more grip.
What is the transmission in this car?
This is a Wiseman.
I've never seen anything that looks like this before.
This was an original transmission for 1986. It's Wiseman Company in Costa Mesa, California. And it has the main shaft here, as it goes through, and then lay shafts on this side. So they did basically the same thing, and they lowered the center of gravity in their transmissions, and they've got a real low. We have 5 inch of crank center line to the bottom of the chassis. So we have 5 inches, and it's a pretty short oil pan, but it's doable, and it's been that way for all these years, since about the 80s, the mid 80s or so.
So when did Trans Am cars go from the Penske Donahue Camaro, which basically just was a Camaro with...
They were stock cars that were modified, yes.
When did they go from that to this?
Well, this was, I would say, about early 80s, like 81, 82 is what I'm thinking, if I could remember back about that far, to a tube structure where you didn't have to use an original vehicle from the street, and modify it. You could build a completely new structure and hang a body on it, and then they got to composite bodies.
Was that a rule change? It
was a rule change.
So it was a stock car before.
It was.
And were they kind of like, well, NASCAR's for stock cars, let's just let people do whatever the heck they want?
Kind of. That's exactly it. It evolved quickly.
Okay, yeah, it's on.
This is Riverside International Raceway in Riverside, California. A lot of stock car racing was done there as well. One of the famous road course races. You can see the stands are packed. And at this time, I believe I was like 20 years old. I'm here leading the race in a handmade, more or less dune buggy with a lot of power and had good grip. But the the interesting thing about this is, out of high school, I went to work for Parnelli Jones and built his off-road Blazers and his trucks, and he loved off-road racing. So I went to work in that department. Parnelli and my dad kind of grew up together, similar age, and my dad was the painter of the group. He did all their boats and airplanes and race cars and Indy cars and all that. And as a young man, I got to hang around some of that stuff and clean up the shop, wax the cars, and kind of learn my craft just from these other mentors that I hung out with. But when I was 20, I'm racing, and this is Parnelli Jones, this is Rick Mears, Roger Mears, Bob Gordon, Mickey Thompson, Malcolm Smith was up here. But I'm working for the guy during the day, and then I'm racing and beating his ass, at the racetrack. So it's like, kid, what are you doing? You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to let the old man do well, And so, but I was you're always doing the best you can, right? But, and it was a 10-lap shootout. It was an extra race. They called it the challenge of the checkbooks, I think is what it was. And everybody put up $1,000. My car owner put up the $1,000, and it was winner take all. And I wound up breaking my front shocks, and Parnelli wound up breaking a drive shaft. Rick Mears actually ran out of gas. I mean, that was so embarrassing, I'm sure, for him. But somebody finally won it, and it was a great race, but it just reminded me of the time of being so humble for where I was and the people I used to be able to hang around and work for, and then compete against them, too, at the same time. It was a lot of fun.
So did you keep racing yourself after that? Or?
Oh, sure, yeah. I raced for 13 years. I won the Mickey Thompson Stadium Series across the United States. We raced Hoosier Dome, Pontiac Silverdome, Angel Stadium, Las Vegas Stadium, Jack Murphy Stadium. So they did the motocross when they bring in and take the turf out, and they'd bring in a bunch of dirt for motocross weekends. So like a week or two before or after, they'd have the off-road championship program taking place too. And then they'd clear it all back out, put new turf in for baseball or for wherever. We were in LA Coliseum up through the peristyles. I mean, we had some great racing back in the 80s and the 90s.
When did you stop and just start building cars?
I stopped, I always have been building cars. An awful lot of off-road cars. We did a Blazer, a two-wheel drive Blazer that ran the parameters of Australia in a 12,000-mile road rally, and we won that race. That was pretty cool. Just lots of different kinds of things like that. We did an awful lot of V8-powered Broncos and things like that were customs, and then a lot of off-road buggies, a lot of sand buggies, and then I wound up hurting my neck and my back in off-road. So I thought maybe, TransAm might be a little easier on my body. So we got involved in doing that, and it's been a great ride, and no reason to turn back at this point. Takes time to get all them little gaps up real tight.
Is this something you ever just get really good at, or is it just chewing on it a little bit at a time forever?
It's a process. It's a lot of patience involved, for sure. I mean, you just want to get to the end product, but rarely do, when you're building things by hand, that you've got to continually fit them until you get it just right. Or you remake the panel, which happens once in a while, hopefully not too often.
So this is your car?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I've been racing late models on road courses for about 23 years, and this car is what all the late models that I've been in wanted to be. Something with 850 horsepower, with downforce, with huge brakes. It'll corner, it'll stop, and it takes off like a shot out of a cannon. So I'm just so excited to be in a Weaver chassis Challenger this year. We're going to chase after a GT1 championship in SCCA and dip our toes into TransAm a little bit.
Where are you going to practice at?
So my home track is the track that my grandfather built, Pacific Raceways, just out of Seattle, Washington. The track at Kent, known historically, it was stop on the TransAm, USAC, USRRC, Can-Am circuit back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's got a long history. Dale Earnhardt Sr. won a Winston West event there in 1984. Richard and Kyle Petty raced there in 85. Mark Donahue won the first race Penske ever won, I think, in 1969 in a T70 Can-Am car. So long history. We're coming back. We're adding barrier like crazy and chasing after FIA2 certification. But old historic track on the West Coast with a lot of history and hopefully a bright future.
I'd like to see that track someday.
Well,
if we can make it up there one of these days.
Yeah,
it's kind of far.
These cars are the baddest ass cars on the planet, and Pancho Weaver is the baddest ass car builder. So there's nobody better at building TA cars, and TA and GT1 are pretty similar. So we just couldn't be more excited to have met Pancho last year, have him put together this. We saw Boris said run this, and you just can't come up with a combination that is better than an R5 or an R6, 850 horsepower in a Pancho Weaver Dodge Challenger. So, I mean, this is what it's all about. You can't get any better than this. If you're into late model stock cars, this is like what a stock car wants to be if it took a bunch of steroids.
If half probably 7/8 of the rule book got erased and just let you go do whatever you wanted, it would end up like this. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Andretti made a interview on a TA website, and he says, man, I was telling my brother, this is what a cup car wants to be. You know, it stops, it takes off, it corners, it's got 850 horse, it's got plenty of tire, it's got aero, and this is what we all want to be in if we race stock cars on road courses. And finally, a dream come true.
Now, I don't know about you, but for me, TransAm is one of those things that the more I learn about it, the more interested I become, because I really didn't know very much about it or anything about it at all until the last couple of years. Kind of just been absorbing by osmosis. It just is around here. And meeting Pancho and AJ, who were actively involved with TransAm, kind of made me look into it a little bit more. Like, dang, this is pretty cool. I want to see more of this. I'd like to know what you think, if you feel the same way or not. Tell me why. Especially that it's just a little pocket of the way things were. I mean, you got Pancho, who's a super smart guy, talented fabricator, legendary in his industry, and he works out of what is technically his basement, building some of the fastest cars out there. You don't see that in any other form of motorsports anymore, but it's still alive right there. And that's why when we heard about it the first time we went there, I was like, no, this is something we have to show people, because I would think that most of the world doesn't know that that still exists somewhere. And don't forget to hit subscribe. If you haven't seen our Meadowdale video, that was a track that TransAm used to race at in the 60s. It's abandoned. We did a video exploring that. And AJ Hendrickson's shop, he races in TransAm. We show his TA1 and TA2 cars in there. A lot of old NASCAR race cars. If you want to support the channel, you can head to StapletownAutoworks.com. We actually just got some new stickers on there. These are of the number 42 that's on my Grand National Super Series car. And the cool part is they're handmade by Logan in the office there with the same vinyl that is on my car. And I will say, when you look at this on camera, it looks blue, but if you buy one of these stickers, you will see that this is not blue at all. It's very teal. It's a deep, kind of strange color, but it's really unique. Got them in 2 sizes. They're like $5. You get that $5, or you get 2 of these for $5. Either one. Kind of just want you to see what the car looks like, mostly. Check it out. Speak your mind. Send this video to a friend. Be a good person. All that stuff. Go watch another video. I'm sure that the YouTube algorithm has not showed you our recent videos in order. So go to the channel page and see if there's ones you've missed. And if you have, I would like you to comment on them so I could kind of take note which ones it's skipping out on. And I can't do anything about it. I just want to know.